I don't know what I expected when I heard that Old Blood Noise Endeavors was releasing a new stereo version of the Black Fountain oil can delay, but it definitely wasn't this. You've got to hear it to even begin to understand it, and once you understand it, you're probably going to want to build your entire pedal board around it. Welcome to Get Offset. My name is Emily and I'm really proud of you. Old Blood Noise Endeavors sent me the Black Fountain to film, but thoughts and opinions are all mine. For those who don't know, Black Fountain is and always has been an oil can delay. This, however, is a different beast entirely. Old Blood Noise didn't just give the old Black Fountain a stereo spread. This has way more controls, presets, and is capable of a wide range of sounds, from sweet to downright nasty. In the best way, of course. As the manual says, it's more of a, quote, romantic expression of the sound of an oil can delay. Honestly, this is so much more than a delay pedal. I'll have some descriptive timestamps below, so feel free to skip around. I'm using the Benson Chimera plugin from Mixwave and this offset broadcaster that I built with a Seymour Duncan Joe Bonamassa 1950 broadcaster pickup set. The first thing I'm going to show you how to do is change the input and output mode because it's important, and I needed the manual to figure that one out. The Black Fountain uses TRS jacks for stereo ins and outs. You can have it running stereo in and stereo out, which I think is the default, mono in to mono out or mono in to stereo out. I want mono in and stereo out, so I'm going to hold down the bypass switch and press the preset button until the middle LED is lit. There we go. The top LED would be mono to mono, and the bottom would be stereo to stereo. I want to get into sounds as soon as possible, so we're going to go through the controls as we progress the video versus doing it all at the top. Since this pedal has a lot of depth to it, I'll be focusing on some of my favorite sounds rather than spending an hour showing off every little thing the Black Fountain is capable of. I'm going to start with the rate, depth, and grit down, all the way down. Tone, both time controls, feedback, wet, dry, and space, all those little ones there, are approximately in the middle, about as close as I could get it. So this is the dry signal with the pedal engaged. Black Fountain has two time controls. One is dedicated to the left and the other to the right. What they do is they set the center of the delay time on the left and right repeats, so you're not literally setting the time of each, and we'll talk about that later. You should be able to hear a bit of a ping pong effect in the stereo out modes. Feedback sets the number of repeats, and those repeats feed back into each other. So if I turn feedback to about 3 o'clock, you'll be able to hear that even better. You can hear that really lovely degradation that happens to the repeats as they go. All right, I'm going to turn these bottom 3 knobs to about 9, one at a time. You could really hear how cool that was when those time controls were set extremely differently. Don't worry, we'll max that spread out more eventually. What I want to do right now is have some fun with a bit of a doubling kind of sound, which I really like. It's something that won't overwhelm, but it will add some depth to your sound, make you sound a lot bigger, you know? Nice. I really like that. That's one of my favorite settings. Anyway, let's look into the modulation section, rate and depth. I generally like a high rate and a low depth. So rate to 3 and depth to 9. You can hear that we have a bit of a vibrato kind of sound going on. It's obviously a lot more noticeable when you hold a chord out. It's just a fun setting, and at those levels with the feedback down, it's not overwhelming. But what if we crank the feedback to 3? There, you can already hear it. That's extremely fun. It's a little cartoony, sure, but I really like it. You can mellow it by dropping the mix overall as well as the depth, so it's kind of this underlying funky thing. I love that. All right, I'm going to drop the depth and increase the mix again, so we can experiment with having those different left and right delay times. Whoops. Remember, we're setting the center delay time, not the individual time, so they are very interactive. You can see that with these indicator LEDs, right? So they're both flashing pretty quickly when they're at 9 o'clock. And if I've moved one, the other one slows down quite a bit too. You can also just tap in a tempo and get a simpler ping-pongy kind of sound. By the way, you can also set it so that you can tap in different subdivisions to each side. I'm not a big subdivision tapping person. I prefer to just have like kind of quarter or eighth note tap, so I'm not going to get into that, but it is possible. By the way, this also has MIDI, which I'm also not going to get into, and I'm not really going to use it with an expression pedal, but those are all things that you can do. Again, this pedal just has so much that it would be impossible for me to cover all of it in any kind of reasonable time frame. We haven't talked about tone, so let's go ahead and do that. Simply put, repeats are warmer and darker to the left, brighter to the right. It's almost muted all the way to the left, but it's still very cool and usable. I think this is really cool sounding when you crank the feedback past 9 even, because it just mellows out so much and you still get this kind of like pad-like feel. Maybe even all the way up. you almost can't hear the edge of the repeats at all. And if you strum like muted strings, it has this cool ping-pongy sort of thump. If we kill the dry signal and go 100% wet, it sounds really cool. I'll max the feedback too. Can let that ride and adjust the time controls. And the rate and depth. Let's dime the tone in the other direction for science. Okay, enough of that. Get back to some more regular-ish settings. Let's get into grit, which I just had max, but you haven't really heard it. Grit sets the saturation for the delay from mostly clean, which is, again, where it's been the whole demo, to mostly dirty. I need my dry signal back. At noon, it's already pretty dirty. And max, it's very dirty. With dirt, you may want to adjust the mix of wet and dry to taste because it can get pretty loud. I want to try it with that doubling setting I had earlier, which is a pretty easy one to find, thankfully. The depth is down, by the way, so rate, it doesn't matter, but I'm just changing it anyway. Nice. That's really cool. It's like, sounds like a dirty guitar doubling a clean one. It's almost like having a gritty drive pedal with a clean blend when you drop the time and the feedback completely. Check this out. That's cool. That's just cool, man. That kid's getting a little loud. Now hear what happens when I leave the modulation rate at 0, but I turn up the depth. The way that lifts and sweetens everything is really, really special. This pedal in general is special. And honestly, it sounds good with the depth up, the rate down, and everything largely at 0, even without the grid. I just love it. So the one control we haven't talked about is space, that last itty bitty one. Space varies slightly depending on if you're outputting a stereo or a mono signal. Since we're using this for stereo, we have it at noon, which gives you the full stereo width. When it's fully to the left and right repeats are closer together, and past noon it introduces some diffusion to the delays. With the current settings, which I think are hilarious and great sounding, it sounds like a diffused reverb to my ears. Let's move feedback to noon, time L to just under noon, and time R to just above it. Actually, let's go opposite on that. So noon, no diffusion. All the way down, less stereo spread. And at 3, so sweet, and as the name promises, spacey. Let's add in some light modulation. Rate will be at noon and depth at 9 or 9:30. I forgot I had the depth up, but it sounds fine. Still, you get it. And just the tiniest hint of grit. So, earlier I promised nasty tones. I don't feel like I've yet delivered, so let's get nasty. Let's set the time controls to nearly their minimum, not quite. Nearly max feedback. Actually max grid and tone. You can already hear it. And I think that might be let's find a sweet spot with some kind of fast modulation there. Yeah, that just sounds wild, and something really cool happens when you start to mellow the tone. There we go. So, yeah, that actually wasn't what I expected to happen. This changes a lot to me depending on the pickups, because those settings with a different guitar that I was playing, the Fender Standard Telecaster, what would happen is it would start to get a little bit glitchy with those settings and the tone knob at about 2 or 230, and it would have a kind of glitchy thing that would fade in and out a little bit like what you were hearing, almost as if the tone knob was giving it this gated response. I couldn't get that to replicate right now, which is too bad, but that was a lot of fun also. There it is. It did it. I think it clipped again. So, what do you think of the Black Fountain delay, the stereo version? Let me know in the comments. And tell me, do you think I found some cool settings or the stupidest ones? I'll let you be the judge of that. If you liked this video, check out the one on the screen where I demo the Old Blood Noise Endeavor's beam splitter in Stereo. Like, comment, subscribe, leave a tip via say thanks below if you feel so inclined. Thanks for watching. Thanks for understanding. Until next time, my name is Emily. Goodbye.